list is already there, so there's really nothing for us to generate because we generate it based on a geographic area. If you didn't have a list, yeah. No, right. $13.58. Yeah. We could take a look at it and see. Is it a big lot? Do you know? Look.
Hello. Good afternoon. We'll now begin the Planning Committee meeting of Akron City Council. At this moment, do we have the minutes, Mr. Clerk? The process is we have 3 public hearings this afternoon, I do believe, Mr. Antonucci. Yes. We have 3 public hearings this afternoon, and the process for the public hearings is that we will swear in anyone who wishes to testify either against or for the conditional use requests that are before us. We will get a report from the planning department on each individual item. Then we'll open it up for public hearing and a public comment period. After that's over, the committee then will have an opportunity to ask questions. Then council will have an opportunity to ask questions. That's going to happen today. This evening at 7 o'clock, we will invite everyone back to testify before the committee at 7 o'clock tonight. In essence, we will repeat the process. However, at the end of that process, the committee will make a report to all of City Council and a recommendation, either favorable, against, or to table the item or take time. And so that's the process. However, at this time, what I'd like to do is ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak this afternoon on the public hearings to please stand and be sworn in by a representative from our law department. Anyone wishing to speak this afternoon on the conditional use request? Anyone?
Do you swear for the testimony you give today will be I do.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative from our law department. So the first item that is up for a public hearing this afternoon is the ordinance amending, supplementing Title 15, Chapter 153, Zoning Code, Section 153.296, Biomedical Use District, Class UB, by expanding permitted uses allowed. Mr. Antonucci.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, the Biomedical Use District, UB classification, was created in 2010 to encourage development of uses such as laboratories, medical device manufacturing, and biotech software development, along with specific development requirements. Class UB does not permit retail uses unless such a use does not occupy more than 15% of the total floor area of the building in which the use is located, or apartments, offices, and general commercial uses. The biomedical use district encompasses two main areas, west of the main Summa Hospital campus and southeast of the Akron Children's Hospital and Cleveland Clinic, Akron General Hospital campuses. The planning staff believes that broadening the range of allowable uses within the district is logical. Stark State College will open their campus on the eastern edge of the biomedical use district in the fall of 2018. The presence of Stark State College should encourage retail development along with apartments around the campus to serve the needs of students and staff. Additionally, the planning staff believes that allowing certain commercial uses within a district would be compatible with existing and future uses. The proposed text change will allow more flexibility for a mix of biomedical, retail, office, residential, and commercial uses within this biomedical district.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. At this time, we'll open up the public hearing and ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the proposed amendment to the biomedical use district. Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone? Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone against the proposed amendment to the biomedical use corridor? Anyone against? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and open it up to questions from the committee members or council members if there's any questions. Okay. Very good, Mr. Neal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I haven't had a chance to study this yet. Looking at the piece of legislation that's in here, it looks like there's a strike through retail sales, consumer service establishing. Am I looking at the right thing? This is in regards to the biomedical?
Right, that's
district?
the section that says only 15% of an existing building can be retail. So what we're doing is opening it up to any retail to come in there. So you're going to be allowing, instead of just biomedical uses, which is what is currently allowed, we actually haven't been getting our doors beaten down by biomedical uses in this area. But this will open it up to allow for more retail, allow for commercial, offices, and apartment uses.
Okay.
So it just opens it up. And
Yeah, essentially the previous text is pigeonholing it just into biomedical, and this, like Mike said, this is to make it a little bit more flexible.
I have no problem with that. I guess my only concern is, where do we stand in our effort to develop the biomedical corridor? I mean, I know it didn't go the way we wanted it to go, but it had such promise. Have we given up on that? Is there still a...
The administration's revisiting that, and while we would never turn away or discourage biomedical uses, the vision has kind of changed to have a broader mix of land uses in both parts of the biomedical, so the part by Children's in general, as well as the part by Summa and Stark State.
And all those listed biomedical uses will still be allowed in that area. It's not saying you can't have that, it's just saying in addition to those.
Right. Again, no, I have no problem with the request that's being requested. I'm just hoping that we haven't given up on the overall vision because it had such promise. And just in general, that's one of my things. You know, we have so many different initiatives that come, and it seems like when there's grant dollars behind them, we're gung-ho for the initiative, and then when the grant dollars dry up, we go to another plan. No problem with this. It's just in a bigger scope. I'm hoping that, you know, we can, if there's any glimmer of hope of what we were told in the past on the potential of what the biomedical corridor provided, that hopefully those who were supposed to work together at that time, maybe with a better climate, can work together to make that develop. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll now move on to item number 2. It's up for a public hearing, authorizing conditional use to establish a child daycare business center at 545 Cass.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Levy Golden and Latana Slayton Golden are requesting permission to establish a child daycare business center at this location. The proposed daycare business center, Soaring Little Eagles Daycare, would occupy the downstairs portion of the 1,344 square foot split level house Care will be provided for a maximum of 12 children with a separate room each for the care of infants, toddlers, and school-age children. No changes are proposed for the interior or the exterior of the house. Besides the petitioners, one other person will assist with the curriculum. Petitioners recently were licensed by the state of Ohio to operate a Type B, which is up to 6 children. However, they have been unable to provide services for some families due to the ages and amount of children that they have in the family. The request for up to 12 children would allow the petitioners greater flexibility and the ability to serve entire families and also coincide with their state license. While daycare services will continuously be available except for holidays, the majority of the services provided will be during the daytime. Property is well maintained, and the zoning staff has not received any complaints about the current daycare. Planning staff is of the opinion that providing care at various times and varying ages for no more than 12 children should not have a detrimental effect on nearby homes. Providing quality daycare services beneficial to the entire city. Both Planning Commission and planning staff recommend approval subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. At this time, we'll ask if you're going to testify. Would you mind getting sworn in real fast by a representative of our law department?
Yes, do you swear or affirm the testimony you give today will be entirely the truth? Please signify by saying I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll open up the public hearing portion, and we'd like to hear your name and address and the reasons that you're for this proposal at 545 Castle.
Sure. My name is Latana Slayton Golden. I do reside at 545 Castle Boulevard. Have been a part of the community for 7 years at this point. I did open up a 24-hour daycare, Type B, just recently in April. However, the demand has been a little bit overwhelming. I'm not able to assist families that are asking for care, traditional care. Although I am in operation 24 hours, I am not utilizing 24 hours. I currently do not have any children staying in my overnight care, so I am fully staffed for other individuals, not including myself, so there should be no concern child ratio. I do have 2 people staffed for the morning as well as the afternoon. So the latest that I'm in operation is probably about 11:30 with 1 family.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. At this time, I'll ask if there's anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request at 545 Castle. Anyone in favor? Anyone? Okay, anyone against this proposal at 545 Castle Boulevard, the conditional use request? Anyone against 545 Castle Boulevard? Any comments? Against? Okay, very good. We'll close the public hearing portion and open it up to council members on the committee. Is there any questions or comments? Ms. Mobian.
I'm just curious, is this, we've had like 3 or 4 of these in recent months. Is this unusual? Is it only unusual because of the number, the increase? Because people could normally open their home and do a daycare without any type of...
Right. Right now, the way our zoning code reads is you can have a child daycare home up to 6 kids, and there's a special license for that, for the 6 kids with the state. But then there's another license that allows up to 12 kids.
Right.
And that's, the state recently raised that up to 12. Our code caps it at 9.
Right.
Where we put that up to essentially the Board of Zoning Appeals. So if they go over 9 kids, up to 12,
They need to come here.
it kicks it into a conditional use situation.
Now, I know we're talking about changing to match the state. When do we plan to do that?
We're working on that right now, and so what will probably happen in the future if we make that change is a lot of these that have been coming to council will probably go to the Board of Zoning Appeals,
Okay.
but not become conditional uses in this way.
And that's the only reason we're hearing about these is because of the special zoning, because of the increased number. Because all they would normally have to do is get a license from the state and get whatever permits they need to do locally and inspections locally, and that would be it, right? I mean, that would be the normal protocol. A state license, fire code,
Right,
whatever
well,
other
state license,
inspections.
right. And that, under that state license, there are certain building code requirements built
Okay.
into that. I think it's fairly relaxed up to 12 for the state.
Okay.
As you go over, that's a retail daycare, and it's a much
Right.
more, it's a different process.
But the only reason we're hearing about these is because of the increase in
Because
number.
it's from between the 9 to the
Okay.
12. And also, when we do change the zoning code, if we go in with a code change, and obviously that would come to city council.
Right, right,
For-
right. So when we make the change internally, they would not come to us?
Right, it would come to this committee, and you could look at that change at that time.
Mr. Swirsky?
I just want to thank you for your initiative and let you know that at least some of us we can't say for sure how the vote's going to go, but we're grateful for the service that you're providing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll invite you back this evening at 7 o'clock for the second public hearing today.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Item number 3 is also up for public hearing, authorizing a conditional use to construct a storage building at 1623 East Avenue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Jose Felix is proposing to construct a tire storage building on the east portion of this property. The proposed building would be sited 49 feet from Clearview Avenue. Will also be sited 12 feet from the south property line, 11 feet from the east property line. The building will measure 30 feet by 50 feet for a total of 1,500 square feet. Construction would be of split-face block, steel siding with an asphalt shingled roof. Petitioner stated that he needs the storage building to store tires instead of having them stored outside. Also plans on renovating the existing building, including refacing the front facade of the building with stone. The proposed building will bring this property into compliance with the zoning code. Additionally, the proposed renovations to the existing building will improve the overall appearance of the property. Although a dense row of shrubs exist along the east property line, a solid wooden fence should be installed to further shield any activity from the neighboring residential district. Planning staff's of the opinion that the proposed storage building will be an improvement over the current conditions without intruding upon neighboring properties. Subject to the installation of fencing and landscaping, both Planning Commission and planning staff recommend approval, subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the conditional use request at 1623 East Avenue? Anyone in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak against this proposal, 1623 East Avenue? Anyone against? Anyone? Hearing none, we will now close the public hearing and ask any council members on the committee if they have any questions. Questions? It's for tires. Yeah, it's for tire storage. They have exterior storage now, and so we're encouraging them to enclose it. About the extent. Okay, so any council members having questions? All right, hearing none, we'll now move on to the balance of the agenda. Very good. 1, 2, 3, 4 is this is reference the sale of 630 and 642 Diagonal Road to the B.R. Kinez Construction Incorporated. I could let council members know that we did, a couple of us traveled up to Cleveland today, did the tour. It was really eye-opening in terms of what they've been able to do with regards to density and the land use. And it's kind of polar opposite of what we're almost used to in terms of the zoning code and so on and so forth. But if you think about it, and if you got to see what we did, it definitely is the new market, if you will. I believe the market now is, and as we learned today, was that they're moving back into the city because of developments like this. Is one reason. There's many, but I believe that's one reason, is because of developments like this. And I don't know if anyone else would like to weigh in on this, but President Somerville, would you like to make any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to speak in support of this ordinance. As the councilperson for Ward 3, we've been talking about bringing single-family housing to Diagonal in Ward 3 for quite some time. So this is actually a really exciting day for Ward 3 as we look to increase the total population, not just in Ward 3, but in our city overall. I do want to thank Mr. Sanderson for actually providing us that tour, because as my colleague Mr. Fusco said, it was truly eye-opening. You know, at first we had some concerns about density, but they have done an absolute fabulous job on other projects in Cleveland that will look very much so like what's happening on Diagonal. Just great work, and being able to put units together so nicely. So just hope that my colleagues will support this ordinance on tonight.
Thank you, President Somerville. Any further questions or comments? Ms. Mobian?
Just curious, I didn't have time last week to stay after the council meeting or the committee, whichever one you met with the individuals. There were some questions raised. Were we able to satisfy those with regard to the runoff of the water and all of that?
Ms. Strand, were you in that meeting? I had a couple other meetings I was involved with that day.
Yeah, at the meeting, I believe everybody who was there is relatively satisfied with the explanation in terms of the stormwater that's going to need engineering approval. There's a big retention pond, and so that's going to be able to control that runoff. And so that was discussed at the meeting.
And I think Reverend Brown also had a question
Well,
about
there was
the
some
demarcation.
questions about some buffering and fencing and that kind of thing. So that'll be, you know, the petitioner's going to work out those details.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any further questions or comments? I'd like to ask for a suspension of rules with a favorable report. I believe this is the second or third reading. I'm not sure. Do we need suspension of the rules? Do you need suspension of rules? Okay. Yeah, is there a recommendation for suspension of the rules with a favorable report?
Motion for suspension of rules with a favorable report.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Very good. We'll report out favorable this evening. Item number 5, is this the one with the substitute, Mr. Antonucci?
That's correct. That's
Okay.
on the
So
new
there is a
legislation.
substitute on this particular item under planning, new legislation, which is item 3, is that correct? That's correct. Which I'll read in the substitute. It's an ordinance approving the sale of a certain vacant city-owned properties at 202-204 vacant lot East Miller Avenue pursuant to the city's Allot for Little program in order to facilitate productive reuse of the property and to reduce the cost to the city and the taxpayers of maintaining vacant lots. Is there someone here to speak on this item?
Mr. Moretz is here to...
Apologies. Thank you. This is a standard lot for a little lot sale. This would be to expand the side yard. We would ask for consent agenda.
Okay. Is there questions or comments? Samovian?
This is a revision from last week?
Yes, it was combined with another one that they were separated due to one had to go to planning commission and one did not. So we're bringing them back as a substitute by their own.
And instead of 2 is 1 or something?
Yeah, this is just for one lot sale. There's another one, the next piece of legislation is the other part of that one.
Thank you.
Further questions? Questions, comments? Consent agenda is okay?
Yes, sir.
Is there a recommendation? Is there a second?
Second. Second.
All those in favor of consent agenda signify by saying aye. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Very good. 6 and 7 we will refer. Item number 8 is the Consolidated Action Plan. We did have some questions in reference to that last week, and there was a request made for a listing of all those individual organizations that we contract with in terms of the CDBG budget, Emergency Solutions Program, and the Home Program. That's been provided to all the council members. It's in their box. Is there any questions or comments in reference to this? And this is approving the Consolidated Action Plan. Mr. Neal?
Yeah, just had some questions on some of the ones that are on here, but I can ask those on the side.
Okay, very good. For the questions, this is simply approving the plan. All right, very good. Is consent agenda okay on this one? Very good. Is there a recommendation for consent?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, the ayes have it. Very good. We'll report out to the consent agenda this evening on that item. Item number 9 is this is actually the conditional use to construct a single-family detached allotment, reference the Diagonal Road and south of the Copley Road. This is the actual zoning itself. And of course, this is the Knez development that we spoke about earlier, and this is the actual conditional use. So is there any questions on this? If there's not, is there a favorable report with suspension of the rules? Motion?
Motion for favorable report with suspension of the rules.
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Very good. And then 10, we'll go ahead and file that this evening, assuming that we pass 9. And on the balance of the agenda, I'm just going to recommend time, short of any concerns or comments. And we will then move into the new list of legislation. Number 3 we did address because that was the substitute that was on the regular agenda. That's taken care of. Now we have item number 4 on the new list, which is an ordinance accepting a vacation plat for the portion of Pine Alley. Mr. Antonucci.
Yes, this is vacation of a small bit of this Pine Alley. This will assist Children's Hospital in building a new parking deck. The majority of the alley was vacated back in '94, but we left, there was, for whatever reason, a little piece of it at State Street that was left unvacated. So they need to come back. We need to have that vacated so they can go ahead and build this parking deck.
Very good. Is there questions or comments? Consent agenda okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, very good. Is there a recommendation for consent agenda? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Very good. 5, approving the sale of city-owned land at 132 Willard, finding that the land is not needed for public purpose.
The city owns this single-family property. The property contains 5,250 square feet of area. It was acquired by the city from Summit County. The city would sell the property for $3,148 to Dennis Cloyd, who currently occupies this dwelling on the property. The sale will place this back on the tax rolls and take a property off the city's hands to maintain. Both Planning Commission, planning staff recommend approval.
Questions or comments? Mr. Kilby?
How did we come up with this price?
Well, first off, it was a tax delinquent property, essentially sheriff's sale. We acquired the property through Summit County. The gentleman's living in the house, and so we're selling it at that price. But that's, I think, Mr. Westcott could probably answer that question better.
So there's no taxes that he has to pay on top of it?
Oh, he'll be paying, yeah.
Oh, I know the future, but what about the back taxes? Was there any back taxes he had to pay?
Mr. Chairman, the price that was quoted there for $3,000, that was for the court costs and things like that when we acquired the property. So that's what we had into the property, and we are actually selling the property back, or selling the property to Cloyd.
Okay, so he lives there?
Yes, that's correct.
How long has he lived there?
I'm not sure how long, but he's been there for a while.
So he was renting it, and the landlord got behind on the taxes? Is that what happened?
I'm not sure, but no, I believe he was he correct? He was the owner of the property, and that was something that he was delinquent on his taxes. When we went to acquire and do our land banking activities in that area, that was one of the properties that was caught up into the land bank, and according to him, and he's proved that he actually lived at that property. We thought it was actually someone who actually was squatting at the property. Okay. So we went back and actually will sell that property, make him whole, and also stay into the property.
So how much was the property taxes before the place was foreclosed upon, do you know?
I don't have that number right now. I can get that for you.
Well, it's not that big of a deal, but I just don't think it's, I know it's not the greatest neighborhood in the world. It's good to keep a house there and have home ownership in that neighborhood, but if he just didn't pay his taxes for 5 years and then lost the house, I just don't, I think that's unjust enrichment if he got out of paying all his taxes and now he gets the place for next to nothing. I don't know, just my opinion, but.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Further questions or comments? Is a consent agenda okay on this, or? Is there a recommendation for consent agenda? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, the ayes have it. And then if there's any concerns or comments, we'll have a week to look at and ask. And I do want to talk to you about this. 6, ordinance declaring improvements to certain parcels of real property to be a public purpose, requiring the owners of the improvements thereon to make service payments in lieu of taxes, establishing a municipal public improvements tax increment equivalent fund for the deposit of such service payments and related authorizations pursuant to sections 5709.40, 5709.42, 5709.43 of the Ohio Revised Code, and authorizing the execution and delivery of the redevelopment and tax increment financing agreement with Akron Romick Road Limited Liability Corporation, a Delaware limited liability company, authorizing the execution and delivery of a purchase and sale contract with the developer to sell certain real property owned by the city. Mr. Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Today I am thrilled and excited to present a significant piece of legislation to this committee and this council. This legislation before you will enable the sale and redevelopment of the former Rolling Acres Mall property into a new commercial facility, bringing jobs and opportunity to Kenmore and Southwest Akron, an area that has not seen this level of investment in many decades. In fact, all of the census tracts in and around this project site are economically distressed, according to the Federal Community Reinvestment Agency. A brief overview first of how we got here. I don't think I need to go through the life and history of the former Rolling Acres Mall. That's well documented. The city took ownership of the former Rolling Acres Mall property in 2016 through the foreclosure process. It should be noted that the city acquired this land for $0. We demolished the abandoned mall last year at a total cost of approximately $450,000. In the meantime, the city has worked to prepare the site for redevelopment. The legislation before you represents a critical step, and I emphasize critical, towards bringing new job creation and economic opportunity to Romick Road on a scale not seen in Akron for generations. I have no doubt that your support and leadership today will put this catalytic project on the best possible path for success. This legislation represents the sale, redevelopment, and TIF agreements with the project developer, Akron Romick Road, LLC. Allow me to provide you a quick overview of the agreement. The developer has agreed to create a minimum of $30 million in new annual payroll. We estimate that this will sustain at least 500 newly created jobs. According to city records, and we spent a significant amount of time to make sure this was true, this commitment on payroll represents the largest new payroll commitment ever brought to this council in modern times. The developer has agreed to construct a 600,000 square foot or larger commercial structure. Total project costs are estimated to exceed $100 million. The developer has agreed to pay the city $600,000 for the former Rolling Acres Mall property, which exceeds the city's investment into the property. The city will utilize tax increment financing, or TIF, on the newly constructed facility for a period of 30 years. The city will use the initial TIF funds to reimburse the developer for their cost in land acquisition, which is allowable under state law. Once made whole, all subsequent TIF proceeds will be utilized by the city toward public improvements in the area, including the planned reconstruction of Romick Road itself. Additionally, the city will utilize 2% of the annual TIF funds to cover our costs of managing the fund over the life of the TIF fund, which is 30 years. It's a rare occurrence to be a part of something that holds such great potential to positively impact our community. The jobs and income taxes generated by this project would provide a ladder of opportunity for our residents and support for essential city services that benefit all of our neighborhoods. The geography of this project cannot be emphasized enough. We all, both council and administration, work so hard every day to make available jobs more accessible to those who need them the most. Place matters a great deal in this equation. I am convinced, we are convinced, the mayor is convinced that this project will breathe new life not only into Roaming Road, but the South Hawkins-Vernon Odom corridor as well. And Lord knows, such an opportunity like this is long overdue. I'd like to publicly thank our city staff from Integrated Development, including Planning and Economic Development staff, the Law Department, who've worked tirelessly to bring this project to you and to this point. With that, Sean Bowman and I are happy to take your questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hardy. And at this point, what we'd like to do is open it up for questions from the committee members at this point. Not a sing-along. Is there questions from any committee members? Ms. Movian?
What is the project?
The project is to construct a 600,000 square foot commercial structure on the former Rolling Acres site that the developer has committed within that structure to have a tenant that will bring at least $30 million in new payroll on day one. That is excluding construction jobs. That's new payroll in the facility. So construction jobs would be on top of that. And at least we estimate that will sustain at least 500 new accessible jobs at that facility.
Is this one business or multiple businesses that he's going to bring in?
This agreement is with the developer. The developer is on the hook to bring that payroll, whether through one tenant or multiple tenants.
I see. What would happen with the current tenants that are there on the far end of Sears? Would they still be able to stay there?
Our understanding is that the developer has been for some time now and will continue, my guess is, for a little bit longer, acquiring other property outside of the city's property. What negotiations they are coming to, we are not privy to, but that is our understanding, is that they seek to acquire land around the land that the city owns.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions or comments from committee members? Very good. Hearing none. Any council members? Mr. Kilby?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so the TIF is for the $600,000 to pay for the property. Is there more for the construction of the building?
So the way TIF works, as you know, is that there's a land value right now. Then they will construct the new facility, thereby raising the value of the property. Tax increment financing, which this council has been amazing at utilizing for development in the city, then takes the incremental change, and we get a pilot payment. So we have a 99-year compensation agreement with the Akron Public Schools, so they're made whole. And then we use the city's portion under Ohio law to negotiate, oftentimes, splits or uses of those dollars with the developer. This is actually slightly different from what we typically do, and Sean can explain better than I can, but this is what's called a 40 TIF. So it's actually more restrictive in what the developer can use it for. In this case, one allowable use is the reimbursement of land acquisition for the total project, so not just our land, but the total. So we have agreed under this development agreement to utilize our portion of the TIF to first make them whole for that land acquisition. And then after that is completed, we would then get 100% of the TIF to then put back into public improvements in and around that corridor. Now, the one caveat to that is that we've negotiated a 2% administrative fee for the whole life to make sure that it costs staff time and money to manage that fund. This is something new. We haven't done this previous. We want to try and do this more going forward. But we were able to negotiate that in this agreement.
So who gets the 40%? Who gets the 60%?
So right now, the split is essentially 98-2 until they're made whole. And then after that, we get 100%.
But who gets, you said it's split right now, 40 to 60%?
That we've done, we've split it in various ways over, it's on a case-by-case basis. Yeah. So on this particular project, we've agreed to first, outside of the 2% administrative fee, to first make the developer whole for land acquisition. Once they are made whole, we then get 100% of the remaining TIF, which under Ohio law we can utilize for public improvements in and around that corridor.
So why do we have to do it for 99 years then? I mean, How many years do we anticipate it would take for him to be made whole on?
No. So the TIF is for 30 years.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The agreement with the Akron Public Schools is a 99-year agreement, and we make sure they're made whole first.
Okay. So is that all TIFs or just this particular TIF? We have that agreement with the...
You can do TIFs of various length. We have always, in the city of Akron, typically done 30 years because it maximizes the amount of funds collected for both the city and the developer.
Okay. I still didn't hear the $600,000...
I'm sorry.
...is for the land. Are we going to TIF the cost of building this warehouse or whatever it is?
Yes.
Is that how
Oh,
much?
sorry, go ahead,
How
Sean.
much do you anticipate that cost?
No, under this type of TIF, the 40 TIF that you talked about, it goes to public improvements. Public infrastructure improvements is the term. One of those items that can be reimbursed under public infrastructure improvements, land acquisition.
Okay, and the developer is going to pay for the construction of this building?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay, so sounds like a good development. Sounds like a really good agreement. We need jobs and income tax revenue, but I guess let me play the devil's advocate. What happens if he doesn't, hire 500 people? What happens then?
So in the agreement, the developer can only realize the full TIF stream if they meet these obligations. If they don't meet the payroll or job obligations, they get a reduction in their TIF.
Okay, good. Looks like you guys thought everything, so.
We tried.
Mr. Neal, then Ms. Samples.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Exciting. Have us over here trying to figure out who it is and whatnot, but won't say that. But this is my one question. I know there have been businesses that have been up there for a while because there's not much up there, and they probably have a pretty discounted rate of rent. You bring something like this in a small business, all of a sudden stuff starts to jack up, and I know we're extending the TIF here. And I know this may be out of the norm, but if we could get some idea of those businesses that have been there, what their revenue stream has been over the years, because all of a sudden rent's going to start going up pretty soon, and pushing some of these businesses out that have been there for a while. I'm just thinking of them.
It's an excellent point. I, for one, don't want to see Primo have anything but more people in their deli.
I think Primo would be cause
Let's hope so.
I hope they own their building.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
No, it's
But
a good point.
I'm thinking of the folks that rent. Now all of a sudden you're going to be pushed out of your building because, there's an opportunity for the landlord to make more money. So in saying that, I'm saying possibly we work out some kind of formula to where, those businesses and the landlord, whatever relationship they have, we can put some type of buffer there. I don't know what that would look like. I just know, I know it's coming.
It's an excellent point. I don't have an answer today, but we can certainly look at that, and it's a fair point. We want to make sure that the folks that have stuck it out in the corridor reap the benefits for sure.
Thank you.
Mosley Samples.
Thank you. I have a few questions. I haven't had an opportunity to go through the whole entire document. I would assume Judge Belfance must have did this. I'm appreciative of her work, but I have a question as far as the developer. I know Councilwoman Amobian asked who the developer was. I appreciate that they want to build this warehouse factory, but I would really like to know what it is that they're building, if we're going to approve it. The first thing I thought, 500 jobs and $30 million, I hope they're not building a prison in our city.
No.
That's just my first thought, because
It's not
it
a
doesn't
prison.
say what we're building, but we're about to vote on something that we don't even know what it is that they're building. Sort of kind of raises an eyebrow for me, so I feel a lot more comfortable knowing what we're about to do and what we're about to vote on, because it's great that we're going to have jobs, but that doesn't mean they're not bringing the 500 people with them. They can have 500 new jobs, but none for Akron residents, so I just have a couple questions in that area.
Sure.
If you could elaborate a little more.
Sure. So first of all, it's absolutely not a prison.
Thank you.
And the mayor, it's not a casino. In the development agreement, it says it must be a commercial structure. So this will be a commercial facility. The jobs will be commercial in nature. It's zoned commercial light industrial. So we won't have heavy industry up there as well. I think to address the concerns about will our residents benefit, it's absolutely something that we thought long and hard of when this opportunity came to us. First of all, the siting of the building. One of the biggest challenges that we have had, at least in my 2 years, 7 months in this job, has been the fact that for the last 25 years, the incentives have taken jobs out of the city and into the suburbs, and in many cases, a 90-minute commute one way for our residents. By placing these jobs in and around areas that desperately need them, we foresee a unique and once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to partner with Metro, to partner with other rideshare companies, to work diligently with our partners all up and down the workforce spectrum, to do everything that we can to make sure that those that live in and around the Roaming Road area are going to get these jobs. It's a private development at the end of the day, but I think that place cannot be understated enough, that putting it where people need it the most is the first step in terms of improving accessibility. The other thing that I can say is that the type of job is one that is accessible. And that was also very important to us as we negotiated this. This is something that, while significant in payroll, will allow people at various stages of workforce skill sets to find gainful employment, and that's critical. So I appreciate, Councilwoman, your understanding of the position we're in terms of how these deals sometimes go, and your trust in us in that. But I can assure you that this is a commercial facility that the community can be proud of. It is not a prison. And that we have conceptualized with our partners already various ways in which we can incentivize and motivate the developer to make it as easy as possible for people across all skill sets to gain employment at this new facility.
Okay, thank you.
President Somerville?
And Chair, you know, I will first yield to the council person.
Oh, yes, Mr. Freeman?
I'm just, a place that I've lived for the past 36 years, I look out my western window and I see the hill. And so for the past 15, 20 years, every 6 months the hill gets darker and darker and darker as more and more lights are turned off. This is, I mean, outside of Goodyear, which had to do with retention, this is the biggest thing. And Mr. Fusco, you've been here longer, but you were in and out some. But this is the biggest thing that we have seen. And I mean, I just think about the $100 million investment, and then I think about $30 million payroll. And I know, you know, Ms. Somerville and probably Ms. Samples and myself, we're kind of excited because it's our end of town and whatnot. But I would correct you on one thing. I really think this grabs the whole city when you're talking $30 million payroll. And I remember well when we dedicated the Metro terminal up there, and it was, and the mall was on life support, and I turned to the then finance director, it was not Ms. Miller Dawson, but I turned to her, then I said, why here, why now? Well, it was a federal thing, it had been planned for years. It's in a great place now, because it's going to be, I mean, transportation-wise, so the stars have kind of lined up. But thanks, you know, as I read through the agreement, and thanks to you and everybody else that obviously have done, you know, a lot of hard work. And, you know, I think I'm like everybody else. I'm anxious to see, you know, what's going to happen up there. But thank you very much.
President Somerville?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to speak in support of this project. Although it's not in my district, it borders Ward 3, and truly a district that will benefit not only from the investment, but also definitely from the jobs. I mean, we already have a new development coming there, Stony Point, who could truly take advantage of the jobs that will be coming up on a Rolling Acres Hill there. So I think I want to just thank you and your team for all your hard work. I think this moves us, past that point of just talking about bringing jobs to Akron, but actually putting our feet there and actually making it happen. This is so huge. I think a project of this magnitude, I'm just hoping that my colleagues will make sure that this piece gets passed on tonight. It's pretty hard just to kind of leave $100 million development just sitting out in the wind and a $30 million payroll just out there. So I'm hoping that we understand the magnitude of this and that this is big for the city of Akron.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Mr. Kilby?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One other thought. There's jobs and then there's jobs. Now, I did some quick math, and $30 million payroll divided by 500 comes up with $60,000 as the average yearly income. Is that accurate? Seems kind of high to me.
Yeah, we were conservative in our estimate on the new job growth. We actually believe it'll likely be higher.
Okay, so there's usually a few CEOs that are making a lot of money, and average workers, sometimes you can skew these numbers up pretty high with averages. Do you have any idea what they're going to pay their workers here?
So I can tell you that they are living wage jobs. They are jobs that carry benefits, which for many of the families that we are seeking to lift up, benefits is a huge piece of the puzzle. You can maybe piece together a $35,000 salary with 2 or 3 hourly jobs, but getting health benefits from an employer is a totally different thing. So it's definitely, these jobs we anticipate will be accessible jobs, as I said, for people up and down the skilled workforce. So there probably will be some high-paying jobs, but there will also be entry level. But we do anticipate, as I said, we think the 500 new job count is conservative. However, I feel confident telling you, Councilman, that for my integrity on the line, that these are living wage jobs with benefits.
Good. So would they be one employer or multiple employers here? Do you know?
The agreement's with the developer. So as I was sharing with Councilwoman Amobian, it's on the developer to come up with these jobs and this payroll. So it could be one tenant, could be multiple.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions or comments? Amobian?
This developer is out of town or in town or?
Delaware.
Oh, we don't know, Delaware?
Yeah, that's
The
what
state of Delaware?
Yes.
In this situation, Delaware is a very popular state to incorporate your business in, whether or not you're from Delaware.
Yeah, I know they
There's
do
a lot of
stuff with
Delaware.
credit cards and stuff. Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? Is there a recommendation for suspension of the rules with a favorable report?
Recommendation for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Anything else to come before this committee? Hearing none, we're adjourned.
It was okay, yeah.
How can you vote on something you don't know what to talk about?
It don't matter. When you talking about $100 million development, it doesn't matter what it is.
What if they start? I'm just saying,
Minimum of 500.
I'm just saying, what if they start, they don't finish, and then we got another vacant piece of parcel left there? I don't care.
We got confirmation, that's not gonna happen.
Okay, I'm gonna hold you to your fire, hold you to the fire when you're up for election again.
Basically, that's it.
I can see it now. Somerville brings 500 jobs to the 3rd ward, and then he's gonna do 500 jobs to the 9th ward, and only 200 people working up there. How you do that? No, I hope it comes true. I think it's just a big dollar store, to be honest. Two. But I bet you some people won't vote for it. Just my guess. Who's next? don't you help her out, man? She's buried. Take over that funeral home for a couple of days. I know, make sure your microphone's on. What did you say? Would you help your daughter out? She's buried. So she can get a new job up at Rolling Acres. Public service, ladies and gentlemen.
Tara.
Here we go. You ready? You ready there, Madam Chair? Where's Mosley sample?
So let me get this straight.
You ready? Finally? Thank you.
Peanut butter and jelly for one whole week. Okay, I'd like to call the Public Service Committee meeting to order. All members, oh wait, I think we're missing Tara. Yeah. Councilwoman Samples is not with us at the moment, but she is here. Is there approval on the minutes from our prior meeting? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, the minutes are approved. Okay. This afternoon, old business. On our old business, we will be taking time. And are you talking to me? Okay. No, that's good. To be sorry. I thought you were telling us that. But we will be taking time on our old business. Okay. And on our new business, the first thing to come before us is an ordinance levying special assessment for the improvement of Kingswood Drive between the termini of Merriman Road and Rocky Hollow Drive, and Rocky Hollow Drive between the termini of Kingswood Drive and Rocky Ridge Drive by paving, grading, constructing, and reconstructing curbs, concrete sidewalks, driveway approaches, storm sewer and water mains, installing roof drain pipes and planting trees, all together with the necessary appurtenances and declaring an emergency. And would that be you, Mr. Moore?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this was a project that we completed late last year. It was a full improvement job on Kingswood and these other streets. The final costs are in. This would be levying the special assessments for a portion of those costs. And consent would be fine.
Okay, thank you. Are any questions from the committee? Any questions from members of council? Hearing and seeing none, there has been a recommendation from Mr. Moore if we would consider consent. Is there a motion for consent? I've got a motion, and I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will be placed on the consent agenda. Second piece to come before us today, number 8, is an ordinance levying spatial assessments for the improvement of Wilbeth Road between the termini of Dallas Avenue and Interstate 77 by paving, grading, constructing, and reconstructing curbs, concrete sidewalks, driveway approaches, storm sewers, and water mains, installing roof drain pipes and planting trees, all together with the necessary appurtenances and declaring an emergency.
Madam
Mr. Moore.
Chair, members of the committee, this is for Wilbeth Road. This project was completed. The final costs are in, and this would be the assessment for the abutting property owners' portions.
Would you like the consent agenda also?
That would be
when
fine.
that time comes.
Consent would be fine.
Okay. Questions? Any questions from council members that are in the chambers? Hearing and seeing none, is there a motion for consent? I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, this will be placed on the consent agenda. Number 9, ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to file an application and enter into an agreement with the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency for clean air grant funding through the State of Ohio Diesel Mitigation Trust Fund program, authorizing local match requirements for the same and declaring an emergency.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this would allow us to apply for the diesel mitigation grant program. That's part of that pot of money that Volkswagen had to pay to clear up some of their transgressions. We're asking for a 50-50 match in this grant application, which would basically allow us to buy 3 trucks for the price of 1.5, and this is just to allow us to apply.
So this is just for application, and I want to thank you very much, or whoever caught this one, because I caught it.
Big Jim Hall.
Thank you, Jim Hall, and all of the people behind you, because I was made aware of it and sent it to Mr. Luddle, and he said, oh, we already have that in the works. So that was a real nice feeling to know that, boy, you guys don't just do your everyday work, you go above and beyond to find these. So what you're asking from us is to place this application in, and with a 50% match if we are able to get it. Okay. Any questions from the members of the committee? Any questions from members of council? Councilman Swirsky. Up to the microphone.
Mr. Swirsky, you want to use the microphone, please?
Could you please just explain a little bit more about what diesel mitigation is and why it's necessary?
I'll let Mr. Hall give you the details on the grant.
Yes, sir. Basically, Volkswagen got fine penalties for fudging their emissions numbers, and these fines and penalties were distributed amongst all the states. And once it was distributed, Ohio was broken down into 3 primary areas, being the Akron-Cleveland area, the Columbus area, and the Cincinnati area. So basically, that piece of our pie is going to be divided up from people who apply based upon whoever gets the most emissions reduced per grant dollar received. So it'll be a very, very highly competitive grant. Correct. Diesel exhaust emissions. The diesel exhaust emissions.
And it's all because Volkswagen kind of weren't real accurate with what they presented, so they have been fined. Any other questions? Okay, I have a motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report. Is there a second? And I have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing and seeing none, we will place this on the agenda tonight with suspension of the rules with a favorable report. Is there anything else to come before this committee? If not, we are adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Motion to. Okay, next we have safety.
Before you even sit. Gets a little kick out of
That's what I was thinking. Do you want it in August? No, you want it in September, right? If we can't do it in July, correct?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call a public safety meeting to order. All members are present. We did have a meeting last week. We had one piece and we suspended the rules long. Can I get approval of those minutes, please? All in favor? Aye. All right. We have one piece authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into agreements with various political subdivisions in the county of Summit for the provision of prosecutorial Sir, I knew I was going to mess that up.
It's okay.
Provision of prosecutorial services and declare an emergency, and I still messed it up.
That's okay, just stop.
So, Gert Whelms, our city prosecutor.
No problem. I appreciate your time. We are here just to have these contracts set for renewal. These are agreements that we have currently, have had, I got to tell you, institutional knowledge. I can't remember when these contracts did not exist with these outside jurisdictions. We're talking about the relationship we have with Fairlawn, Mogador, Richfield, Bath, Springfield, and Lakemore. The city of Akron also is serviced by the Akron Municipal Court. Each one of these jurisdictions, all of their cases come through the Akron Municipal Court. Instead of each one of these municipalities, townships, hiring their own prosecutor, they just hire us through the contracts to actually pursue these legal cases for them. I would say, just briefly looking at the stats I have here, it's somewhere between 8 to 12% of the work we do every year actually is for these jurisdictions. To be realistic with you, Mogador 1 year only had 84 cases that we dealt with. So again, it is a cost saving to them. It is a way for us to actually make some money from some of these outside jurisdictions to provide this service. We provide start to finish services on any misdemeanor case. With the felonies, we do provide the police legal advisors, the 24-hour service, search warrants, helps answering questions, what charges, one, should there be charges, what should those charges be, is a search warrant needed? We do help ultimately even with creating the search warrant if needed. Once the case comes and would be a misdemeanor, again, prosecutors in my office would handle that start to finish, any misdemeanor. For felonies, the only thing we would handle is that advice at the initial inception of the case, the initial appearance, and then an attorney appearance. This also, the contract does divide up the direct indictment charges. I think Prosecutor Morgan was here to talk to you about the direct indictment, the cost savings involved with that. It's the same for the other jurisdictions. If we can directly indict these individuals, it doesn't require Fairlawn to bring officers in off the street, pay them overtime to do a preliminary hearing, and then go to an indictment as well, a grand jury process. So there's that cost saving there. We actually run that contract countywide and then pass along whatever that cost is with this contract for those outside jurisdictions as well. And somebody way smarter than me, God bless Steve Fricker, did the math for us. So I feel pretty confident you're not relying on my bad math. Fricker helped us out with all of this. So, any questions?
One, can you introduce your guest for the record with title?
Yeah, I'm David Honig. I'm Assistant Law Director. Basically drafted the contract. I was here if you had contract questions. Okay. Running the program.
Can you speak into the mic, please, sir? Thank you.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Yeah, David Honig, Assistant Director of Law. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Gert, that whole time you didn't even say the word I stumbled on? Or did you?
Listen, I know my limits, so I'm just going to say prosecution.
All right, any questions from committee members? Councilwoman Sims?
I don't have a question, but just a statement that I don't see how in any way that this circumvents folks receiving justice in the process. So I appreciate the efficiency that'll occur as a result. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions? Committee members, council members? Do you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay, I saw you.
I'm just
grab
getting
the
ready to say
microphone.
motion for.
All right. Oh, Jeff.
You gotta
Gert,
be quick.
what's your pleasure on this?
Consent works.
agenda? Okay.
Motion for, see, I wasn't fast enough.
Cool. We have, who's making the motion?
For consent.
Okay, motion for consent. Can I get a
Second.
second?
Thank you,
All in
sir.
favor? Aye. All right, with that, we're adjourned. We'll put that on consent agenda. Thanks, you two.
All right, if we could call public utilities to order. Can I get a motion on approval of our last meeting minutes? Who's all here? Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We have one piece of legislation in front of us, ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee, after publicly advertising for bids, to enter into a contract or contracts to construct Eckert Ditch water quality improvements and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moore, Mr. Leto?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this is a 319 grant. It's from the Ohio EPA. It would focus on wetland improvements around the Eckert Ditch. It would allow us to remove invasive species and then add in plant material that would help us filter the ditch before it gets into Lake Rockwell. The total project is about $419,000. Our city's share would be $181,000. So the lion's share of $237,000 would be through this grant.
Okay.
Consent would be fine.
Okay. Any questions from committee members? Mr. Kilby?
Yeah, how long is this ditch, Mr. Moore? How long is it?
That's Mr. Marchand is most familiar with it. It's
Are we building it or improving it? I mean, it's already got a name, so it must be something there.
It's an existing ditch that we're just cleaning it up a little bit and
Okay.
making it function more in a way that will filter the water.
So how does that work? Like, it flows better, and you don't get as much bacteria? What are we gonna do there to?
That's correct. What will happen is the existing ditch has been diked, so both banks have been built up, and it doesn't interact with the floodplain, the wetlands on each side. So the dike will be breached, and that'll allow the ditch to start functioning like a regular stream would.
Okay, so was there a natural stream there at one time, you think?
Yeah, there is a stream there right now.
Okay.
That's been diked probably at some point in the past. I don't know exactly when.
Okay, so how long is this stretch of ditch?
It's not really long. I don't know, 700 feet, 500 feet.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at my drawing I have here.
You know, I just, I know we're paying a small portion, or a little less than half, but it just seems like a lot of money for a 700-foot ditch. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're gonna put it out for bids, but okay, maybe engineering would answer this. Like, how do they come up with this number of whatever, 419,000 before you even put out the bid? I mean, if I'm gonna get a bid on someone doing something on my house, I just call a bunch of contractors and let them tell me what they'll do it for. Like, it just seems like, and we always do it this way, like, we come up with a number and then we put it out to bid. I mean, it seems a little backwards to me.
Our bid will be based on the amount of material that needs to be moved, the plant material. This is an engineer's estimate. There'll be multiple bidders on the project. I mean, it's going to be a competitive bidding process.
I understand.
And this section of the ditch is right adjacent to our reservoir, so it is a critical part of the system up there. So it may only be 700 feet, but it's the last stop before it hits the reservoir.
Yeah. So where are they gonna haul the dirt away that, you said it's been diked? Where do they haul that dirt away to? Do you know?
Well, the dirt may not be hauled away. It may just be relocated on site. Right. Just the dikes need to be breached so that the water can interact with the floodplain. There's also the invasive species that's going to be removed and replaced with native species. And then there's a third part of it, which is to try to reuse the alum sludge that the water plant has and has to get rid of anyway. There are studies being done that show that sludge will be able to absorb phosphorus from the stream itself, and that's the primary problem with the ditch, is it's heavy phosphorus load that then causes algae and things to grow in our...
Where's the phosphorus coming from, do you know?
It's coming from upstream, from...
farmland.
Yeah, it's primarily comes from fertilizers used by farms.
Yeah, I got you.
So, and the wetlands will absorb a lot of that phosphorus anyway.
Good. All right, thank you very much.
Any other questions? Mr. Swarsky?
I'm glad that the drinking water is being protected in such a conscientious and thoughtful way. If there is even any little bit of additional expense, I mean, drinking water is one of our most valuable resources, and I think the residents appreciate that and want to have water that tastes good and that is healthy for them. And I also like the fact that you recognize the importance of removing invasive species, and I think that's something that we have to sort of keep in mind in all of our work with trees and with other issues too, and thank you guys for doing that.
Any other questions from any committee members or council members? Consent's fine, right? Can I get a motion for consent?
Motion for consent.
All in favor? Opposed? Ayes have it. If there's nothing else coming before us, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
On a certain level, he's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bullock threatened that at one meeting. You remember that? Before you were on council, he was threatening. I mean, he was joking around, but yeah. But no, you guys will be like a huge part of the city. It's great. It's great. And I was afraid to ask almost like, because I didn't want to hear the answer. I didn't know what the answer was, so I didn't want to ask it. And he said, yeah, it's good. They're all going to have it. It's huge. It's screwing everything. Yeah. And the stress from it. Yeah. Yeah. Bingo. Bingo. Yeah. The benefits is huge. Yeah. 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 I know, it's depressing. Depressing as hell. It's depressing as hell. Yeah, me too. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's good. And I think it's really unusual. All of us kind of say, okay, we don't really like passing something one day, but you know what I mean? But everybody kind of just said, okay, we can't walk away from this. And what are you going to do? Like, you say, oh, well, this number should be changed to that. You know, like spend a week doing that. You know, it's just common sense. It's a deal on the table. Yeah. Well, they write so they can talk to each other.
I know, but one time I started to go to a bond closing.
Yeah.
Issue $200.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's like, you've got 40 attorneys now, right?
A lot of verbal elbows. Is your meeting at 3? Is there a budget?
Yeah, 3 p.m. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. You give me a job. What? You give me a job.
Yeah, with benefits.
With benefits. Hey, I got a house up before I sell you.
You see all these. Hey, we're gonna see all these people who work for the city jumping ship. We'll go.
I mean, a bunch of jobs right over in front of Hill.
That should help. Are you staying around Kenmore or where are you?
I'm doing a right Baptist, kind of 2 miles away.
Okay.
Waterloo and Manchester.
Yeah.
righty. Like to call to order the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting? All in favor? We have nothing on the old agenda. Our first item up, for the record, please let it be known that all members are present. Our first item is a ordinance authorizing the mayor to accept a grant award for the Akron Peacemakers Project funded through the U.S. Conference of Mayors, Dollar-Wise Mayors for Financial Literacy Initiative, authorizing expenditure of funds on identified programs to promote financial literacy and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Rice is here to speak on that item.
Yes, sir.
Yes, President and members of the Finance Committee. This grant is a really coup for the City of Akron. It this grant will allow us to facilitate training for 1,200 students in the Akron area, the Akron Public Schools, on financial literacy through a series of workshops that we're doing with our partners, one of which is the Financial Empowerment Center, Huntington Bank, various city partners.
Questions or comments from the committee? Excellent. What would be, yes, Ms. Keek?
Can you tell me what grade levels this will begin in, this financial?
High school.
In high school, so a freshman?
Freshmen through seniors.
I think we should take down to the elementary, just me, but okay.
Well, one of the things that I found out, as a side note, is that there's a national research that says only 22% of all high school students have financial literacy when they leave high school.
Trickle down isn't pretty.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So they are partnering, going to be using the resources of Financial Empowerment Center as well. Excellent.
Yes, sir.
Couldn't say that last year, could we? All right. Would consent be okay for this?
Yes, it would. Thank you very much.
Have a motion for consent? All in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have an ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent to enter into a contract without the formality of advertising for bids for backup software for the city-wide data center from Software House International Corporation and declaring an emergency. Mr. Fatica.
Good afternoon, council members. It's always a pleasure to come down here and speak in front of you. Unfortunately, I don't get to do it too often, but it's always a pleasure to be down here in front of you. What we have here today is our backup software. It's a citywide solution, so we're backing up our data center, police and fire, data centers, servers out at Kent, and also out at WPC or water reclamation. Backup is very important to our existence. It allows us to back up files and restore data in a timely, efficient manner. And also, if we have any, hopefully, we won't have any disasters, but it'll help us recover quickly in the event of a disaster. The proposal is for $36,424.44. That includes the software and the first year of support, and also 2 additional years of maintenance and support.
Okay, excellent. Is there redundancy in that? I mean, is it here and there, or how?
That's correct. We have, as you may or may not know, out at Involta, that's where our primary location is. We do all of our backups off-site to Involta, and then we replicate that data back to our data center also, so we have multiple copies of it.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from committee members? Yes, Ms. Amobian?
Now you back up daily,
That's correct.
and this is to extend the contract with Involta, or is this another one?
No, this is to replace the software that actually does the backup process.
Okay. Now this is with now is all this stuff with the county? Because I thought we were doing something with the county before.
We are working with the county and Mark Pettit on this purchase, yes.
We back up our materials separate from the county?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Would consent be okay?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Neal.
I just had a question. I noticed this is for the software. Is the working with the county, will it be stored on their hard drives, our hard drives, or and do we need, is there going to be a subsequent request for new hard drive space for this, or?
Yeah, we already did the hard drives, the actual hardware. We did that earlier this year. And yeah, we're going to be piggybacking off of the county. And right now, we're keeping things separate, but there's, you know, since we're piggybacking and all connected and stuff like that, there's a possibility that in the future, we might be able to restore something to them, and they might be able to restore something to us as a, you know, a disaster or a backup scenario, yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. I'd like to entertain a motion for consent. Have a motion and a second for consent. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, thanks, Bill. Thank you so much. All right. And finally, we have a piece, an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $2 million for the purpose of acquiring perpetual easement in the building known as the Lock 4 Arcade within the Bowery development in furtherance of economic development purposes for the city and declaring an emergency. Mr. Hardy.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This legislation represents the final contribution and participation of the City of Akron in the Catalytic Bowery project. I am happy to report to this committee and to council members that within the next 60 to 90 days, after 15 years, actually 17 years of waiting, the financial stack on a $42 million project will be closing both conventional private lending as well as public. The DFA, Development Finance Authority, will be bringing additional pieces that they're doing to their board meeting in August. This is our final piece. We would like to ask the committee, if it pleases the committee, to take time today. We're not seeking, we're fine with 3 readings. We'd like to put together a formal presentation on the Lock 4 Arcade for next week, if that pleases the committee.
Great. Yeah, we have 2 weeks left, so if we could get it in next week, that'd be great. Okay, motion to refer this item?
Motion to refer.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, very good. Thank you. We'll refer this item to our regular agenda. Thank you so much. Nothing else to come before us. We'll close at 3:08.